something very illogical is happening. Most airlines have abandoned the Boeing 717. Boeing's stance on the 717 was ironic, and it no longer shows any interest in this aircraft. Even the second-hand market has dried up. However, Delta has not abandoned it and has equipped its entire network with these aircraft. Delta has actually beaten Boeing with its own product. But how and why? The 717 had three main issues that caused problems for other airlines. Lack of flexibility. Most airlines today are seeking flexibility. Jets that can fly short distances today and medium-haul routes tomorrow. The 717 cannot do this. It is optimized for a single purpose: short routes with a reasonable passenger load. Support nightmare. Production of the Boeing 717 has been halted since 2006. Boeing has completely abandoned this model. No updates, no improvements, no investment. Without Delta's massive inventory of those unique BR-715 engines, finding spare parts is becoming impossible. Second-hand market issue. If you want to sell the 717 later, who will buy them? The second-hand market is essentially limited to Delta and Hawaiian. Explaining this reality to the board of directors when discussing fleet flexibility and residual values is challenging. Boeing's stance on the 717 was ironic. They must have watched Delta's success with mixed feelings. By using a jet that Boeing had abandoned for its 737NG program, Delta had essentially beaten Boeing with its own product. However, Boeing's strategic decision was correct. The 737 family offered much greater potential in the global market. The 717's niche market was small and continuing to shrink. Boeing had allocated its resources correctly. It simply failed to anticipate special cases like Delta, and did not anticipate that this orphan jet could suddenly become a gold mine. Outside of its small niche market, the 717 had nowhere to go. It had no future, no hope, only Delta's ability to turn an orphaned aircraft into a viable asset. 1. DNA compatibility and operational synergy. The 717 shared the same DNA as Delta's retired MD-88/MD-90 aircraft. Same type certification, similar systems, overlapping parts. This compatibility gave Delta a huge advantage. It didn't have to retrain thousands of pilots, just provide some cross-training. While competitors struggled with millions of dollars in simulator costs, type training, and lengthy certification processes for new jet families, Delta pilots transitioned to the 717 cockpit with just a few days of minimal training. The transition from the MD-88 to the 717 was as easy as moving from an older model to a newer model of the same brand. 2. Perfect capacity optimization. The 717's 110 seats proved to be the golden ratio for Delta's hub-and-spoke system. From Atlanta to Charlotte, Detroit to Pittsburgh, LaGuardia to Boston, it's the ideal size for high-frequency flights. Delta's network planning experts have mastered this perfectly. The aviation industry's biggest paradox is parked in Delta Airlines hangars. The Boeing 717, a plane the rest of the world abandoned years ago, one even Boeing is embarrassed by. American Airlines opted for modern E-jets, United chose regional CRJs, and Southwest Airlines quickly sold off its 88 717s. However, Delta didn't just acquire these orphan planes, it made them the backbone of its short-haul network. The question is simple: why is the industry's most sophisticated operator investing in a jet that everyone else has rejected? The 717 traces its origins back to the revolutionary Douglas DC-9 of the 1960s. This design evolved into the MD-80, MD-90, and finally, the MD-95. Engines in the tail, maximum efficiency on short routes. It was the product of 60 years of engineering genius. However, when Boeing acquired McDonnell Douglas in 1997, things became complicated. Boeing now owned an aircraft it had never designed, and this aircraft was competing with its own 737s. The solution? They rebranded the MD-95 as the Boeing 717 and hoped for the best. The market was ruthless. With only 156 units produced, the 717 became Boeing's shortest-lived jet. Production was halted in 2006. The reason was simple. The 717 solved a very specific problem, but that problem didn't exist for most airlines. The 717 was born at the wrong time in the evolution of aviation. When it was launched in 1999, regional jets, CRJ, Embraer, were revolutionizing short-haul routes. Mainline jets, 737, A320, offered versatile flexibility. The 717 was caught in between, not as agile as regional jets, not as versatile as mainline jets. It was too large to compete with 50-seat agile aircraft and too small to match the versatility of mainline narrow-body aircraft. It was the exact opposite of a Swiss Army knife, a specialized tool that could only do one thing. Air Tan spent years trying to unlock the 717's potential, but eventually gave up. Midwest Airlines gave it a try, but found it too large for short routes and insufficient for long ones. Qantas held out in Australia until 2024, but ultimately abandoned it due to fleet inefficiency. The common conclusion was the same. Why use a limited jet when you can get more flexible ones? Even Boeing grew ashamed of the 717. Company strategists accepted this reality and redirected all resources to the 737 Next Generation program, a jet capable of doing everything the 717 did, but better. The operator list shrunk dramatically, and the 717 became aviation's orphan aircraft. In 2012, Delta faced a tough puzzle. The company's backbone, its aging DC-9, MD-88, and MD-90 fleets, was literally falling apart. Maintenance costs had skyrocketed due to age and wear and tear. However, at that time, the 100-seat segment was nearly dead. Regional jets were too small for short routes, while the new A320 and 737 models were overly spacious and fuel inefficient for one-hour flights. There was no perfect alternative. Embraer E-jets were too small, and new narrow-body orders were problematic in terms of delivery times and costs. A serious capacity crisis was emerging in Delta's short-haul network, which accounted for a significant portion of its operations. Then, Southwest Airlines offered an unexpected gift. By acquiring AirTran, it left 88 Boeing 717s available. Southwest's operating philosophy was different. Only 737s, nothing else. They wanted to get rid of these odd aircraft as soon as possible, and this urgency strengthened Delta's hand at the negotiating table. While the industry was indifferent, Delta's experienced strategists approached the situation from a different angle. They signed one of the smartest deals in aviation history. They acquired 88 717 at incredibly low lease rates. Why did it work only for Delta? 1. DNA compatibility and operational synergy. The 717 had the same structure as Delta's retired MD-88/MD-90 aircraft. Same type certification, similar systems and overlapping parts. This compatibility gave Delta a huge advantage. It didn't have to retrain thousands of pilots. While competitors struggled with millions of dollars in simulator costs, type training, and lengthy certification processes for new jet families, Delta pilots transitioned to the 717 cockpit with just a few days of minimal training. 2. Perfect capacity optimization. The 717's 110 seats were the golden ratio for Delta's hub-and-spoke system. From Atlanta to Charlotte, Detroit to Pittsburgh, LaGuardia to Boston, it was the ideal size for high-frequency flights. Delta's network planning experts deemed this capacity perfect. If the aircraft were too large, it would fly half empty. If too small, it would result in revenue loss. Especially during peak business hours in the morning and evening, the 717's capacity could be filled with premium-paying passengers. Smaller jets like the Embraer E175 couldn't accommodate these passengers, while larger jets had empty seats that increased costs. Third, maintenance infrastructure dominance. Delta's Tech Ops division has been maintaining the MD family since the 1970s. The necessary infrastructure, expertise, and spare parts inventory were already in place. This was a huge advantage. Delta's vertical integration became a key asset here. While competitors relied on third-party maintenance services, Delta's technical operations knew every system, every quirk, and every part supplier. The expertise and spare parts infrastructure required for the BR-715 engines were already in place. As one Delta captain put it succinctly, moving from the MD-88 to the 717 was like upgrading your old truck to a more fuel-efficient luxury version of the same model. The cabin design offered unexpected bonuses. The distinctive 2 to 3 seat configuration meant fewer middle seats, which passengers loved. It made life easier for travelers who hated middle seats. The rear-mounted engines quieted the front cabin. Cost efficiency was unmatched. As one network planner put it, "Show me another jet that makes money on a 300-mile flight with 90 passengers." This claim was no exaggeration. The 717's fuel consumption, capacity utilization, and operational costs created an excellent balance on short routes. While the Embraer E175 consumed less fuel per hour, the 717's higher capacity typically provided better seat-mile economics on high-density routes. Delta was getting maximum value from every flight. So why didn't anyone copy Delta's 717 move? The answer is simple. This strategy only worked for Delta's specific situation. Hawaiian Airlines' situation is different. They use their 717s for 20 to 30-minute inter-island flights. Between Honolulu and Maui, there are quick turnarounds, high frequency, and a geographically closed market. Under these specific conditions, the 717 performs exceptionally well. However, the situation is entirely different elsewhere. American Airlines had several reasons for choosing E-jets: new technology, ongoing manufacturer support, and assurance of future resale value. United Airlines prioritized fleet standardization by selecting CRJs and ERJs, shared pilot training, shared maintenance, and shared operations. Both rival strategies made sense for their respective network structures. American's hub system required more flexible capacity. United preferred standardization for cost optimization. Delta announced that its 717s will be retired by 2025. Airbus A220 delivery delays may extend this timeline, but the final curtain is approaching. 67 A220 orders will replace the 717s. Modern, efficient, manufacturer-supported, everything the 717 couldn't be. But it lacks one thing: the spirit of a 60-year engineering legacy. With its A220 orders, Delta has returned to the mainstream, but the 717 bet was won by timing. They got it cheap, it delivered a decade of value, and now they're out. The question is, will Delta see the next orphan fleet opportunity, or has the industry become too standardized? Delta didn't keep the 717 for nostalgia. It was a cold calculation. They saw value in what the industry saw as a liability. They turned failure into success. The 717th proved that difference can still be valuable in aviation. The newest isn't always the best. Sometimes the best is the most suitable. Pause. Every time you see a 717, you're looking at the last rear-engine passenger jet in aviation history, and the proof of how Delta created the industry's most unlikely success story. Sometimes, the smartest move is the one everyone thinks is crazy.